Forgiveness cannot be forced, demanded, or manufactured through willpower. It is not a moral achievement or a conscious act of superiority, but rather a natural unfolding of understanding. When one stops wrestling with the past, forgiveness arises effortlessly, like calm water after a storm. The mind constantly tries to correct, justify, or relieve what has already happened, but the past is beyond reach. It is a memory, a shadow, a reflection that no longer has substance. The moment you realize this, something within you softens. You see that clinging to guilt or resentment is like trying to grip smoke. Real forgiveness begins when you allow life to be exactly as it was, without judgment or resistance. You no longer demand that reality should have been different. This acceptance is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that life has already moved on, and so can you. To forgive is simply to stop fighting what cannot be changed. In that surrender, the weight you have carried of regret, anger, and guilt dissolves, and what remains is a quiet stillness, a sense of peace that was always there beneath the noise of self-condemnation. To forgive yourself is to see yourself clearly, without the distortion of shame or judgment. We often believe that our past mistakes define us, that a wrong choice or careless word makes us unworthy of peace. Yet every decision we made was born from the level of awareness we possessed in that moment. You could not have acted beyond what you knew then. This understanding does not excuse the past. It illuminates it. When you see that your actions were shaped by confusion, fear, or misunderstanding, compassion naturally replaces condemnation. You begin to see that growth always involves error, and that wisdom is refined through experience, not perfection. Self-forgiveness, then, is not about erasing your faults, but embracing the wholeness of who you are, the light and the shadow alike. It is an act of remembering your humanity, of realizing that even your mistakes were part of the learning of the soul. When you stop punishing yourself for being human, you create space for healing. That space allows love to return, quietly, gently, as if it had been waiting all along for your permission to exist again. In forgiving yourself, you rediscover your natural state of innocence and freedom. When you look deeply at those who have caused you pain, you begin to see that they too were acting from their own inner confusion, fear, and conditioning. People hurt others not out of genuine malice, but because they are themselves wounded or unaware. Their actions are often unconscious attempts to escape suffering, even if those attempts create more suffering in return. To understand this is not to condone cruelty, but to see its roots clearly. Every person is a continuation of the causes that shaped them: childhood experiences, societal pressures, emotional scars, and unexamined beliefs. When you recognize this, anger begins to fade, and compassion quietly takes its place. You no longer see them as villains in your story, but as fellow travelers caught in the same web of ignorance and desire. Forgiveness, then, becomes an act of seeing reality without distortion. You begin to release the need to retaliate or hold grudges, for you see that they, too, were doing the best they could with the awareness they had. This realization opens the heart. It turns bitterness into understanding and transforms separation into empathy. In seeing their pain, you begin to free yourself from your own. Forgiveness does not rewrite the past, nor does it deny what has happened. Instead, it changes the way we see it. The same events remain, but their meaning transforms. When you forgive, the sharp edges of memory soften, and pain no longer defines the story. It is as if you step back and see the entire landscape, instead of staring only at the wound. You begin to recognize that every moment, even the ones filled with suffering, play a role in shaping your understanding. Life's harmony is not made only of pleasant notes. The discord is part of the beauty too. Forgiveness allows you to hear that greater music. It turns resentment into wisdom and regret into acceptance. This shift of perception brings freedom, because you no longer carry the weight of needing things to be different. You see that what once seemed like chaos was also part of your becoming. The past no longer imprisons you, it becomes your teacher. And when you see through this new lens, the heart relaxes. The struggle ends. You realize that healing does not come from changing the story, but from changing the way you hold it within your awareness. At the deepest level of awareness, forgiveness dissolves into something even greater. Understanding that there was never truly anything to forgive. The sense of guilt, blame, or separation exists only when we see ourselves and others as divided beings, each acting independently from the whole. But when you awaken to the truth that all life moves as one vast, interconnected process, you realize that every act, every choice, was part of the same unfolding dance. What seemed like mistakes were movements of growth. What appeared as harm was often ignorance seeking light. In this realization, the boundaries between you, them, fade, and what remains is compassion without effort. There is no judge and no accused, only the eternal flow of being learning to know itself. This insight is not an intellectual idea. It is a deep, felt recognition that everything belongs, even the pain, even the confusion. When you see through this lens, forgiveness loses its meaning because innocence is revealed beneath every action. You no longer forgive the world. You simply understand it. And in that understanding, the heart becomes free, unburdened by judgment, resting in the quiet, knowing that all has always been as it must be.